Hello, fellow warriors. Welcome to a new episode of Divided, Survived, and Thriving, where I get to have candid conversations about turning the painful process of divorce or separation into a positive force in your life. I'm Laila Aitken Ali, a divorcee, a divorce coach, and the founder of Split FYI. And today we are here to talk about how to navigate through a divorce while having neurodiverse challenges, how to identify with those challenges, and what are some of the ways to help support yourself or, in certain cases, your child go through the roller coaster ride of a split and the healing process with the lovely Natalie Nolan, who is not only a life coach, but who specializes in ADHD and neurodiversity. Natalie, thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you very much, Laila, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, pleasure's all mine. And in fact, we've had a couple of conversations offline. And, I think that a lot of the things that we talked about really resonated with me personally. And it is a personal topic because I have been diagnosed with ADD and had to navigate that all my life with a lot of challenges. And, we knew a lot less back then when I was growing up about, ADD and what that meant and how to, the tools to kind of navigate that process. And it really shed a lot, light on this problem when I was going through my divorce. And it made it even harder for me. It was like a compound effect of dealing with the divorce and the overwhelm of that alone. And, the fragmented brain that we get when we're dealing with it. There's so many things that we're trying to navigate. And then coupled with the neurodiversity that I've already have going on in my brain. So it was really tough for me. And so this is very personal and I'm really happy to have you here. So one of the things that I thought we could start with is sort of your journey with it all, how and where did it all begin?
I guess I would have to say what sort of led me down the road would be, how they say how your child's struggles can sort of put a big fat mirror right in front of your face and, you're focusing on your child and their struggles, and you're trying so hard to change them or fix them or rescue them. And then all of a sudden it's kind of like, well, wait a second here. What's this really about? And, some of the stuff back then, I recognized that I needed to work on myself. But even now, to this day, even more so recently, I realized one of the big realizations I realized back then was that, my daughter had such a strong personality and she just wanted to be heard. She had this strong voice and she wanted to be heard. And, her dad had a really hard time with that. And I did in a way too, because I grew up where I sort of did too, but I was kind of stifled as well. Right. And so then I became this good girl and this agreeable girl. And she was sort of not being that. And so I didn't know what to do with it. And ultimately what I realized was I didn't know what to do with it because I didn't even realize that I didn't have a voice back then either. Right. And so it led me on this journey into myself, really. And she was diagnosed back then with ADHD, actually. And so that started my journey, and I joined support groups, and then I actually did my ADHD academy for coaching to become an ADHD coach. And it was during that process in my personal transformation course where I started to learn about needs and tolerations and boundaries and all this really juicy, great stuff. And I started taking it personally and applying it to my life. And then things started falling apart.
Right.
In a good way, though. Right. It really shone a big light on my life. And ultimately it led me to, okay, I need to leave my marriage. And what's keeping me? Why can't I seem to get out of here? And so I got a therapist, and I she helped me leave my marriage. Ultimately, she helped
Right.
me leave my marriage. And so that was sort of where it went. It was that I gave and gave and gave. I was this person who just never said no. I was constantly depleted. I had 4 children, a husband that was gone all the time. And it was just so much that I just slowly but surely over the years just lost pieces of myself.
Yeah.
And to the point where, I mean, by the end of my marriage, I didn't even know what kind of music I liked.
Right.
I'd been listening to his music or the kids' music. I didn't even know what kind of music I liked. So that was sort of my journey and then, as I left my marriage, one of my biggest things was understanding that it wasn't a failure and that it was like, well, at first it was like, oh, freedom.
Right.
But it was a chance for me to recreate my life according to who I was. I mean, first I needed to figure out who I was, but then
Right.
now I want to create the life that fits me,
Right.
not fit into other people's lives, right? And so that is sort of what took me on my journey, I guess.
Yeah, and what you're saying is something that speaks volumes, because often I say that, we live in a construct and we create a construct, i.e., even from childhood, right? We're
Mhm.
the daughter, and we have to be the student, and we have, this constructed life that we lead, and it's like, okay, this is the role we're playing, and so it's constant role playing. Whereas it's like,
Mhm.
who are we? Like, to the point where you don't even realize that you got, or I didn't realize I even had this ADD until I was diagnosed, but I wasn't really diagnosed, right? But I knew, but I was like, but I have to be a good student. I have to do this and I have to do that. And I was pushing myself in a way that wasn't natural for me. And, for you, your gift was having your daughter, even though it's a really difficult ride to be a parent for a child who has, certain things that are needing,
Mhm.
they need you more, right? But at the
Mhm.
same time, it's like you said, I mean, looking in the mirror and understanding, wait a minute, the world isn't a construct. We are who we are, and we need to find that and what works for us, because it can also be a superpower, right?
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely.
finding that, right, in all of it. But so the pivotal moment for you is really that unraveling. While you were trying to help your daughter, you were helping yourself as well, which I love. I mean, that's, so poignant, and it happens in all these different moments. And really understanding that, 4 children, hard to leave a construct when you've created one with such a, foundation. 4 kids, it's a lot.
Mhm.
um, so what do you think, how, I mean, how did you help support yourself, other than, I know that you were doing, you are a coach, you're able to
Mhm.
help. So what are some of the tools or some of the things that I mean, I would love to know and find out some things that helped you navigate through this.
Yeah, and I hear you because I mean her struggles made me go, maybe I have ADHD, right? I started looking back on my report cards
Yeah.
from growing up and just all those messages, so many females here, you're too much, you're too loud, you're
Yeah.
too chatty, you're not making good use of your time. Like all that was in my report cards. And so for me with the marriage ending, all of a sudden it was like, okay, so I have 4 kids and he's now out of the house and I have to manage to pack up and purge this house. And let me tell you, we had a huge storage room that was full. I mean, I wasn't quite a hoarder, but practically. And so it between that and then all the legal stuff that I had no idea about, I was terrified to go even see a lawyer and how he would react about it, and just all these different pieces. It was so overwhelming. Like in the beginning, I have to say, it completely shut me down. I could barely get out of bed every morning, and then yeah, I started using some of the tools I learned in the academy, and it was okay. Like sometimes lists work for me, but in this case, they weren't. They just overwhelmed me because it was just these huge list and
Ongoing.
list and list.
Mhm.
So what I did was I did mind mapping actually. And so then I would put like let's say the house, and then I would put bubbles in each room in the bubbles, and then little point form under each room which one I needed to do. And I tried to tackle one at a time, because if I look at the big picture, oh my God, I can't even start.
No.
But then when you just look at each little section,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't always stick to each one, but I tried to,
Yeah.
and or one room at a time or whatever,
Right.
to the point that I could finish. To the point I could finish, because sometimes there's, if I was waiting for more boxes to arrive, or maybe you're using something more often, you can't pack it yet, that kind of thing, right? But I had to do all those things, and it was a lot to manage. And then all of a sudden, I was, by a certain point, once we've done an agreement, I was taking over paying all the bills, and that was something I hadn't been doing. I had completely given up control of that.
Right.
And so that was another thing to learn how to navigate.
Right.
And then there's things that you don't even realize what they're doing around the house that all of a sudden you're taking over as well. Right. I mean, even after moving out and moving into my own place now, there's things that I am just trying to learn how to do. Like I just snaked my drain the other day. Totally disgusting thing to learn, but hey, let's do it, right? Amazing. Why hire somebody if I can just snake it myself?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Well, it's kind of liberating, and it's also, I always say that the journey to self-discovery is constant. It's everlasting, right? And it doesn't mean like that you fit in one construct, that's all you're going to stay in. You go out of the box and it's like, oh my God, there's a whole world out here that being self-efficient is pretty amazing, right? It's a tool. You've always got those tools. And I always say it's like the survival kit. You're creating a survival kit around you that you're constantly adding into your bucket, which is amazing. And it is overwhelming, but I love what you said about that mind mapping. I'm a visual person. And I think often when you're neurodiverse, it helps to be, visualization is really important, because you're overwhelmed with words and fragmentations, or overwhelming, you're looking at something and it looks like, a list to me gives me like heart palpitations, right? So having that, like the bubble effect and segmenting. So it's not like you're looking on one paper, but it's a paper for, each room or whatever it is that you're working on, like a bill. Okay, well, here's the bills, or here's some administrative things that I need to cover. But let's start with just one thing, the bills, and what are under the bills in the buckets, right? I love that tool. Like, it's a great tool for people to use. And even if you're not, even if you've not ADHD, like it doesn't matter. It's a great tool to use.
It is. And you know what? And if you're visual and you don't want to be overwhelmed by it, make it pretty, like use colors, and then it becomes, it's a pretty picture I'm staring at, versus, it's like this list or this chart or whatever, right? So it's just what brings you joy too, right? How can you kind of try to shift what you're looking at so that it's not this horrible thing, this overwhelming thing?
Exactly. I use this sort of tool for clients who are kind of stuck in the negative and feeling they're alone. So I say, you know what? I get it. That feeling of alone is understandable. However, let's really understand if you're alone. So if you put yourself in the middle, let's make a little mapping tool, like a map of who is in your life. Who is it, from people that you might just talk to because you need your kids to get picked up, to the people that you're going to have a coffee with, to the people that you're having conversations with on the phone, to people that you're going to make time for or go out with, or to family, to this. It's a plethora, right? It's just that we get so boggled down in it's like this, that visual is something I use for that as well. So that's I
love that.
Yeah. I really like what you're saying though, because it already is helping me. I'm like, I think I'm going to start doing that mapping tool. for all my
I've gone through the years, like in college, what worked for me was if I could make study notes and then put them into chart form, I would turn them into chart form. And then from chart form, I'd turn them into cue cards and then quiz myself, right? But then as I got older, my ex was very much about charts and Excel spreadsheets and pie charts. So I learned to really dislike them. So for me, the mind mapping was so much more powerful to do. It was more conducive to the way my brain worked, right? Like what worked for him was his brain and how it worked, but it didn't necessarily work for me, right? So the mind mapping definitely worked better for me, for sure.
Well, I love that takeaway. Thank you for sharing that. I also wanted to ask you, and I know I've asked you this earlier on before we got on live, but what is one thing or many, whatever, that you wish you did differently, if anything at all? But I think you do have some things to share.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. Well, I have to say that when I look back at how I felt, I was so overwhelmed and riddled with anxiety and fear. And when that takes a hold of your brain, you can really start to picture some horrible things, and it can keep you up at night. Like I lost so much sleep over worrying about stuff. So for me, it would be to plan more. So I mean, I planned in essence to, okay, I went to a therapist to help me get out of my marriage,
Right.
but also, okay, now you've thought about getting out of your marriage. How are you going to do this? So plan ahead, set money aside depending on your situation. I was a stay-at-home mom for 18 years. I wasn't earning any money of my own, really. And so setting money aside, planning ahead, and researching about the legalities of how it all worked, so that when things were coming my way, I knew what to expect.
Right.
Because otherwise, it can open you up to not only just the fear and anxiety of it, but it can also open you up to being maybe tricked or manipulated as well. And so the more you know and the more you arm yourself with the knowledge, the less anxious you are, the more confident you are, and the less manipulated you can get.
100%.
Absolutely.
I mean, educating
Mm-hmm.
yourself is fundamental, and I'm so glad that you shared that, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I find that when you're in a state where you know that you need to get out of something, sometimes this need to do things speedy and just get out of it,
Mm-hmm.
it overwhelms us. And the problem with that is that if you don't have those things in order, then it can be
Mm-hmm.
even harder for you when you are going through the process. So it's better to kind of take it a little bit slower. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So just
Mm-hmm.
do that so that you're not going back and like, oh my God, I wish I did this. I wish I did that. So that is, I say this and I can't stress it enough, that really get educated, get educated and empowered so that you're not coming from a place of fear, and you're coming from
Yeah.
a place with an educated, decision making process. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And, I have to say, just to add to that, for even in the future, going forward in the future, when you're out on your own, you've got your own place. Like I said, there's all these new things that come at you that can be scary because you've never done them before, or you
Yeah.
wouldn't even know that you needed to do them, like changing the furnace filter, things like that.
Yeah.
But rather than thinking of it as fear, like on the other side of it, fear essentially is excitement, right? Like
Yeah.
they're basically the same thing.
Mhm.
And so rather, why not get curious
Yeah.
or go with curiosity and wonder and excitement? Hey, I'm going to learn some new things and
Yeah.
get curious with stuff. And rather than being afraid of learning these new things, take it on as kind of like a little challenge for yourself, just to be curious and look at all the new skills that you end up learning and acquiring.
So fun. It's the school of life. I'm
Mm-hmm.
telling you, it's ever, never stops, ongoing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's confidence building. I mean, I honestly say that, I personally don't know, and I've never heard of anybody who's gone through such a hard thing as divorce and hasn't really felt more confident towards the end. I mean, everybody hits it in a different moment of their life,
Mm-hmm.
but they get to a
Mm-hmm.
place where they're like, wow, I don't really need anybody. And having that I only need really myself. And of course, bonus when you have other people in your life and you've got another relationship and so forth. But knowing that you can just do it on your own is gold dust. I mean, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm. And I must say, I remember when I first came out of it, when it came to, like, let's say, dating or talking to other people. And initially it was like, I felt like I needed somebody, that to prove to me that I was lovable.
Yeah.
And then as I went through my journey, it became like, no, wait a second, I don't need somebody, but now I get to choose somebody.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
You get to
Yeah.
show up the way you want to show up, and you get to show up
Yeah.
who you are. Like, it's the becoming
Mm-hmm.
you, right? So, and embracing that is fundamental. And I know that, we
Mm-hmm.
wanted to talk a little bit about, the ADHD component and how you can help people, because I know that you're now, you're a life coach. You're very well versed with, neurodiversity, and often it's coming out. Like I would say that, there's a lot of rhetoric around the sheer fact that even post COVID, I mean, people are feeling foggy brained, people are feeling fragmented.
Mm.
Um, we're really reliant on technology now. We don't have these kind of breaks that we used to have. Like I think I could have dealt with my ADD all my life a lot easier, because I didn't have all of this overwhelming, technology and this and that in my face. Like for my daughter, it's very different. So, I want them to understand, like, or know a little bit about your services and how they can find you, and how you can help them through their process.
Well, I'm on many different sort of platforms. One of my main ones is Instagram as at ADHD Divorce. So ADHD IVORCE, ADHD Divorce at Instagram. I'm also on Clubhouse. I haven't really been talking on there recently, but I am on there. And I just recently started a private support group for an inclusive support group for women that are separated or divorced.
Great.
It's called Recreating You, and that is also on Facebook as well. And there's a link on my bio, actually. All the things I'm on, if you were to go to my Instagram, in the link in my bio has everything in there, basically, where you'll find me. And I have the odd YouTube video, and yeah, so that's it.
Oh yeah, we'll direct them to you as well.
Oh, and TikTok, of course. TikTok, ADHD Divorce on TikTok as well.
Amazing. I love the TikTok videos. Yeah. They're so great. And they're great for people who will have that, because they're just short and sweet and to the point. It's really important, and great tidbits of information. Okay, so I always ask my guests what thriving means to them. So that would be your, last question.
Well, I would have, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go on.
Oh, sorry. So thriving to me, I guess, would mean that, for me going through the journey, and one of the biggest parts of knowing that, I'm sort of thriving is just that self-love piece, and discovering your self-worth. For me, that was something that was really missing and impacting me in such huge ways. And even with the ADHD thing, the whole I can't story, very, very prevalent. It still shows up for me sometimes. I have to do what I like to say is pull a weed and plant a seed. Ooh, so I, when those negative thoughts come in, I have to start implanting these, or planting new seeds. Right. So that pull the weeds and then plant new seeds of convincing myself otherwise, right? And just is just also discovering love and joy and peace. For me, it's all about the choices that I make, the people I surround myself, everything in my life. How is it bringing me closer to peace or away from peace? Right. And for me, peace and calm is very important, coming from, a high conflict life at one point and chaotic life. It's really important to me to have peace. And I'm getting closer and closer to that. And even with the kids, conversations and discussions with the kids, because it's been a journey for them too, right? Especially, I mean, they've had their own issues with it, and then also seeing all these changes in mom, and mom having all these different boundaries and tolerations, and mom trying to meet her needs. It's hard for them to understand that. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, you're being selfish, or who are you? Or it's an adjustment for them as well. And so thriving for me is when we all kind of get it, and we're all understanding the importance of that for each of us.
I mean, it's a learning lesson for them, and they'll realize it later on, but you can't push that, right? It's kind of like, all you do is provide them the space to understand more than we ever did when we were younger. That's for sure. And, and you go from there, right? Anyway, beautifully said. And Natalie, pulling the weeds and planting the seeds is amazing. I'm going to really take that and share it with everyone, and everyone on YouTube today is going to, probably take that in and remember I can't even, I'm like backwards what I'm saying. Anyway, I'm I know, like it's an end of a day, one of those tongue twisted. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Splitting Geniuses, for joining us today as well. And if you like interviews like this, please subscribe to our Split FYI YouTube channel and come visit us at www.splitfyi.com. And we are here for you if you need us. Thank you.